As Jesus sat on the gentle hillside surrounded by a growing crowd, people from nearby villages gathered to listen. Shepherds with staffs, farmers resting from their work, mothers with children, and travelers passing through the region all sat quietly as he began to speak. The warm light of the afternoon sun stretched across the hills of the countryside, and in the distance, small flocks of sheep moved slowly through the grass. Looking at the people before him, Jesus told them a story about a shepherd and his sheep. He described a shepherd who cared for a flock of 100 sheep, leading them every day across the hills in search of good pasture. The shepherd knew each sheep and watched them carefully as they grazed, always making sure that the flock stayed together and safe. The sheep followed the shepherd's voice as he guided them through the land, across open fields, rocky paths, and gentle valleys. Most days passed peacefully as the flock stayed close together while the shepherd watched over them with patience and care. But one day, while the sheep were grazing across a wide hillside, one small sheep began wandering away from the others. At first it moved only a short distance, curious about a patch of grass growing near the rocks. Slowly it continued farther and farther away, unaware that it was leaving the safety of the flock behind. The rest of the sheep remained together while the shepherd watched over them, but the wandering sheep kept moving across the hillside until the familiar sound of the flock faded away. Soon the little sheep found itself alone among rough ground and scattered stones. The hills that once seemed peaceful now felt quiet and unfamiliar. It looked around, but could no longer see the shepherd or the other sheep. Meanwhile, back in the pasture, the shepherd gathered his flock together and began counting them carefully as they passed before him. One by one he counted each sheep, watching closely as they moved across the grass. But when he finished counting, something was wrong. One sheep was missing. The shepherd looked across the hillside again and counted once more, but the number was the same. One sheep had wandered away. Without hesitation, the shepherd left the 99 sheep safely gathered together and began searching across the hills for the one that was lost. Finally, as the sun began lowering toward the horizon, the shepherd heard a faint bleating echo through the quiet landscape. Kneeling beside the frightened sheep, he gently freed its leg from the narrow gap between the rocks. The sheep calmed as the shepherd carefully lifted it into his arms. Relief and joy filled the shepherd's heart because the one that had been lost was now found. Then the shepherd placed the sheep across his shoulders and began the long journey back across the hills toward the pasture where the flock waited. Step by step, he walked across the land, carrying the sheep safely as the evening light spread across the countryside. When he finally returned to the flock, the sheep rested again among the others in safety. But the shepherd's joy did not remain quiet. He called out to his friends and neighbors who lived nearby and said to them, "Come and rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost." And Jesus finished the story by telling the people listening that in the same way there is great joy in heaven when even one person who has wandered away returns to God. Just as the shepherd searched for the one lost sheep, God seeks every person with love and patience, and heaven celebrates when the lost are found.